Hello and welcome to Beyond the Boundary. This is news and views for round 22. We've got plenty to get through as usual. I've got Nick to my right as always. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Josh. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And Vinay on my left, how are you, buddy?
I'm very good, boys. How are we feeling?
I'm feeling very
Back
good.
to the desk after a week off, but
We're back for round 22. Looking forward to it. Finals coming up. We are very excited. Getting to the ladder. First up, boys. Sydney still out in front on 64 points. We have a new team in second position. It's Geelong. We'll see what happens between them and Hawthorn this week. Hawthorn one game behind on 60. And then we've got Freo, who consolidated this on the top four on 56.
correct.
Just outside the top four, Port on 52 and North on 48. They both look fairly safe.
Just on that top four, you don't really see that changing much. I'd probably say those four clubs between them are definitely the strongest clubs throughout the course of this year. And you'd think that that'd be pretty, settled.
And I think Freo have reasserted themselves as there is a big four. There's four contenders this season. But
you're right. By beating Hawthorn, you're right.
Josh, from 7th down, the race for the 8 hots up.
I tell you what.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go through those teams. Go through
Essendon 44, Adelaide 40 in 8th position. Then you've got Richmond on 40 in 9th, Collingwood on 40 in 10th, Gold Coast on 40 in 11th. I wish West Coast had won because then you would have had, 6 teams on 40 points?
Yeah.
West Coast are in 36 and that probably rounds out the teams that have any chance whatsoever. Well, it does. But, geez, this week and next week there's going to be some very exciting games there.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Essendon and Gold Coast play each other this week.
Yeah.
There's a two games difference between them, and Gold Coast need to win to have any chance of playing finals.
Right.
Bombers need to keep winning.
Vinay was going through it with me in the car. The most likely thing to happen from here, if you go through the results and pick, you tip the odds on favourite to win, West Coast sneaks into the 8, It's Richmond to lose to Sydney, it's Adelaide to lose to North, so any of these teams are really...
West Coast, but we'll get into that in a second.
Big chance to get there. And Richmond, of course, have won, 7 straight now.
Unbelievable.
They'll have to beat Sydney in the final round too.
Well, the way they're playing, I wouldn't put it beyond.
And it could be a dead rubber game for Sydney in that final round.
They could rest a lot of people. I mean, Fremantle did it last year.
Yep, you're right.
If they consolidate top spot this week, and results fall their way with Hawthorn getting over your boys,
exactly.
They get a game clear.
And just a quick look down right at the bottom. Melbourne, very disappointing on the weekend. They're on 16 points and 17th. And St Kilda also on 16 points. They face a rampaging Tigers side this week, which they won't be looking forward to.
Yes.
Moving on to the Coleman medal, and Lance Franklin, I reckon he might have it won, guys. He's on 61 goals.
Yeah. It's hard to see him getting beaten from here.
9 goals from here, I think. Yeah, he's got he's got the Bulldogs this week, and then he's got Richmond to round it out.
9 goals, 4 on the weekend, I think it was.
That
could have very easily never kicked a bag of 10 in his life.
Yes. You mean exactly 10?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. No. Well, I was going to say
clutching
10 or more. 10 or more.
Oh, seriously?
Yes, he kicked 13.
He kicked 13 on one
apologies.
Josh, we can't
I'm off the ball early.
Taking the sweets off poor buddy, but you're right, Nick. I think Franklin's probably what's that word that you like to use, Josh?
Monty.
Yep, he's a Monty to win it, is what I've said. You'd probably think he'd run away with it here, especially with Roughhead only on the probably 6 goals behind him, is he? So
he's 6 behind. Moving to our first topic of the week, it's the Brownlow medal, and it's been carnage, I'd say, on the weekend. Because all these players, right up with the favouritism to be within a chance. You've got Beams, Pendlebury, Kennedy. They're all getting... And Harvey now has been referred straight to the tribunal. Yeah, everyone's either getting suspended or getting injured. And it almost looks like a 3-horse race with Ablett, who's, already got the runs on the board. Yeah. Selwood, who's coming hard at the moment. And Pritis has been great all year.
I think this is probably one of the most uncertain Brownlow years in recent memory. I think every year there's been a clear favourite, and then there have been a couple of smokies that we think could steal it off them. But this year it's anyone's game. I think Josh Kennedy's probably still a good chance there. Sydney have confirmed that Kennedy may play this week.
Oh really?
Yeah. It's unlikely, but they're saying don't rule it out because Josh Kennedy, I think Josh had a crazy stat on him. He's played how many games in a row, Josh?
127.
That is unbelievable. So what that tells me is this man is good at getting himself right for the game. So, and even if he doesn't play, he'll definitely play the week after, Sydney have said. So he will get one more game into the season.
One more chance to put 3 votes.
You're right, and like you mentioned, Selwood has had a really good back end of the season, like he seems to do every single year. And then you've got Pritis, who's coming really hard, and Ablett, who had such an insane first half.
I think Selwood's actually had 4 or 5 consecutive games where we've given him 2 votes. In our player of the year. So.
He does that, doesn't he? He tends to, when he goes really hard.
It's identical to the season before where Ablett got a really big lead. Obviously, Ablett's been injured this year, but then Selwood came home so hard, and 1 vote I think he missed out on the year before. Pritis we were talking about earlier. He's been so consistent all year. He's averaging, 9 clearances a game? Something ridiculous.
Oh, something
like
ridiculous.
that.
He's been an absolute star this year. Yeah.
The only problem there is he's been in a losing team almost more often than not there, which, as we know, I guess it's similar with Gary, but as we know, that can be a factor that can take votes off you.
Of course.
I think we all just sort of assumed that somebody would overtake Gary, who we had.
That's such a good point, Nick. Yeah,
I think we had 25 votes when he got injured in our Player of the Year, and nobody's called him yet. Nobody eligible has called him.
How
yet.
scary is it to think that? Imagine if Ablett hadn't been injured and he was already on 25. He would probably
finish
chance
40 votes or something.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like you said, it's anyone's game at the moment, and I think what we can say is of the batch of players that can win it, Ablett, Selwood, Kennedy, Prittis. All 4 of them are legends, at the moment. They're all just stars of the game, and whoever wins it, I'd be really, really happy, to be honest. Yeah.
Can we have a tip?
Oh, that's
a tip and a smoky.
Tip and a smoky from here?
Well, my smoky's definitely Matt Prittis, but my tip are probably going to be Selwood.
Yeah. I'd say Selwood as well. He's really found form at the moment. And Geelong, they're still within a chance in the minor premiership, so I see him leading from the front here.
I'll go Prittis as my tip.
Is he tip?
He's coming like an absolute train. His last 6 weeks have just been out of this world, and might be a little biased on my smoky call, but Dyson Heppel is also coming like a train.
I do not mind that at all. That smoky pick, because he's just unbelievable, and he's one
those
of
those long
logs. You don't forget them. So you look at all the Brownlow winners. You've had guys like Ablett. He's bald. You notice him a lot.
Yeah.
Had Dane Swan. He's tattooed beyond all belief, so you notice him.
The only one in recent years probably that doesn't really stand out is Joe.
Yeah, you're right. So there you go. But that's an interesting one, boys, to follow.
Very interesting. Moving on to 2 teams at the moment who, I myself completely ruled them out a fortnight ago.
Yes, you did.
And they have perhaps some unexpected good form. I'm pretty sure most people would have ruled them out at that stage.
Fair enough, yeah, I did as well. Yeah.
But it is West Coast and Richmond, who are now, they're almost the 2 odds-on favourites to take a spot in the 8 after a couple of weeks ago. It's just, you only need one upset and it can change everything. And as we talked about in our discussion on the ladder before, West Coast is actually probably, if you go through the games to come and you tip the favourite in every single one, the odds-on favourite, you'll get West Coast finishing just inside the 8.
Correct, yeah. Well, we look at what Richmond need to do. Obviously, they need to keep winning. That's the bottom. That's all they need to do. They just need to beat St Kilda. If they beat St Kilda in Sydney, they're in the finals. That's it. But what West Coast, obviously, they're a little lower than that in terms of their possibility. They need other teams to do something for them. They need North to beat Adelaide this week. They need Hawthorn to beat Collingwood, and they need Sydney to beat Richmond in that last round.
Yeah.
So all 3, like Nick said, if you had to, put your money on the favourite, all 3, are the favourites. And of course, West Coast need to keep winning as well. So they've got Melbourne, and then they've got Gold Coast. So both you'd say are pretty winnable games by the way they've been playing. So but it really is anyone's game at the moment. Of the 2 teams, you probably say Richmond is probably better poised and would probably have a better crack in the finals. Just because, they've shown much better form than what West Coast have in the last 7 weeks, despite West Coast coming home late. But I tell you what, it'd be an interesting kind of contest, wouldn't you think, Josh? Who do you reckon should probably deserve to make
at the moment, we've got Adelaide and Essendon inside there.
Exactly,
yeah. Well, Adelaide for me, I think is still the favourite to stay in there.
Okay.
Even if they do lose to North Melbourne this week, they have St Kilda in the last round.
Yep.
I remember a few years ago where it was St Kilda actually came against us in the last round. And St Kilda had that bit of extra incentive to get into the top 4.
Yep.
They needed to win by something like 94 points, I think it was.
And they did it.
And they won by 108.
Oh. Yep.
So I could see a similar circumstance here where Adelaide comes up against St Kilda.
And does something like that. What it is essentially is how many points Adelaide can beat St Kilda by, but versus how many points West Coast can beat Melbourne by.
Yeah,
now, of course, this is all very presumptuous, assuming that, West Coast and Adelaide actually win.
Yeah.
You never know. But, of course, West Coast is playing Melbourne this week at Patterson's. And you'd think that both teams, if you had to do a tip, you'd tip West Coast and Adelaide both by pretty big margins, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, West Coast previous form against Melbourne
is big.
Is very massive. Big. The last 3 games they have played, there's an average of 98 points.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like with Richmond, what you said with the extra incentive there, if Hawthorn beat Geelong this week, Sydney have top spots sewn up.
Yeah.
So, they don't want to flirt with their form.
Correct, yeah. This is a good point.
But that opens the door. John Ralph tweeted about this today. That opens the door in round 23, perhaps for Sydney to take it easy. Richmond coming in, potentially having won 8 games straight.
Yeah.
Just nothing to lose, throw everything at that game. They could beat Sydney at the SCG.
Well,
right.
Talking about this percentage, I've just looked up here the ladder, the percentage. I mean, we've got the points. There's 0.10% between Adelaide and West Coast. So coming up against West Coast against Melbourne this week, they'll be looking to put them to the sword.
Put them to the sword.
And Adelaide will be looking just to win this week, but also if they don't, they'll be looking to.
But then, having said that, there's
keep it close, wouldn't you?
No easy feat for Adelaide because North Melbourne trying to sew up a home final.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a very, very interesting kind of dilemma that we're faced with. It's very exciting. Makes it really, really interesting. You know, the last thing you want heading into a final series is probably just a dead set top 8, a dead set bottom.
Yeah, of course.
It's keeping things interesting for the footy public, and then you've got all these teams. How about the teams at the bottom of the ladder? Shaping the way the finals are being carried out. Well, Brisbane went over to Etihad.
Of course, Brisbane. Collingwood's a team we haven't really spoken about here. Brisbane have almost killed Collingwood's finals hopes with.
Well, I mean, we'll speak about it in Beyond the Boundary when we preview Collingwood, but they were just Brisbane were fantastic, but Collingwood were decimated by injury. They lost 5 of their best players throughout that
Probably
game.
their 5 best players, to be honest. Pendlebury, Beams, Reid, Cloak.
And Elliott.
Oh, okay. Maybe not their 5 best.
4 of their best.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Jamie Elliott. He's a terrific young footballer.
He's getting there. But I think, as I was saying before, I think one of the most important things at this stage is probably for these clubs. I think West Coast has considered that, they're not doing it to play finals. I think they focus on just playing their best footy. And that'll take them where
finals will be a bonus.
You're right,
moving on to the Rising Star, and it's the time of the year that the competition for that really starts to hot up as well. Bontempelli, I think, would be the favourite at this stage.
Yeah, he's way unders for me in terms of betting. I'm not a big betting man myself.
No, but he's a favourite.
He is, but he's way under. So
okay, I see what you mean.
There's not much value there for him.
Of course,
I don't think it's that clear cut, to be honest. Bontempelli's had a very good second half of the year.
You're right, but he didn't really play much in the first half, did he?
No, he didn't. Whereas I feel Lewis Taylor's had a terrific year, James Asia's had a terrific year, even Jarman Impey's had a very good year.
I'd agree with you.
Cade Colajasny may be a bit affected by his
hamstring.
You've even got players like Troy Menzel who are still eligible, I believe.
Jake Stringer. I mean, Harry Cunningham's keeping Ryan O'Keefe out of the side, so... Luke Dunstan as well. Luke McDonald's played every game.
Dunstan was the real standout in the first 5 or so rounds earlier in the season.
It occurs to you that a lot of these young guns who were really good crack at it sort of got injured and fell over. You see, look at Luke Dunstan, Tom Langdon missed a few. You talk about Cade Colajasny, those types of players. But it'll be interesting. I think Luke McDonald, you said he's played every game this year, did you say? Except one. So... there's got to be some reward for that, surely, for an 18-year-old kid. Bontempelli's been superb. He's had a Goal of the Year nomination. He's been dominating. But on the other side, you've got to look at this is a kid who's been playing in a top 6 side and has gotten a game almost week in, week out. So
it's interesting. I was very surprised to hear during the week there's not actually a criteria for picking the winner.
Oh, really?
As long as they've been nominated, the judges, I'm not sure how many they are, but they really just pick the guy who they think has been best performed or best deserved relative to his performance.
There's 9 judges and they give a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So.
Yeah. So some of them might rate it highly that a player's been consistent and played every game of the year,
and some might
some have seen the flashy things that Bontempelli has done, and
some go on potential. So.
Yeah, I like this because I think it's much more. It's subjective, it's accurate. It's hard to judge these things with an objective standard, isn't it, Josh? So I think this is actually quite a good way of doing it, to be honest. But at the start of the year, the favourite for the Rising Star was who?
At pre-season,
Brody Grundy.
No. A betting favourite was Jack Martin.
Oh, of course.
Jack Martin. You went to anyone, they'd be like, Jack Martin is a shoe-in for the Rising Star. I think,
he'll be eligible next year. So.
He will, yeah. But, it's funny how things can change so much. Jack Martin is in the side right now, but he's yet to do anything that's, set the world on fire. But that's pretty interesting. Who do you guys, who are your tips?
I think Bontempelli will get it done.
Yeah, Bontempelli.
As I love to call him.
Bontempelli.
Bontempelli, all right.
Bontempelli will get it. But I'd like to see Lewis Taylor.
Me too.
Finish in the top 3. I think he's been absolutely super this year.
I honestly think Luke McDonald, I think he deserves to win it.
Yep.
Come on. I mean, he's played almost every game and he's been good. He's averaged, I think, 17 touches a game. That's really, really good for a young kid. But You know what? I can see the Bompom Telly will probably win it. He's a gun as well, so I don't mind. As long as a good player wins it, I guess. So.
And last topic of the week, Lewis Roberts-Thompson announced his retirement during the week.
No, he's one of those players that just... What's so funny?
He's just a cult hero, isn't he?
He is. And
he is.
He's one of those players that won't finish in the top 10 of best and fairest, but he'll give his all each week.
He's the kind of guy that won't win an All-Australian.
Should have won the 2005 Norm Smith medal.
Should have, yes. He's the kind of guy that you won't see him, finish in any, All-Australian sides or win any, like you mentioned, Brownlow's best and fairest. But he's the kind of guy that'd be one of the first picked in your team.
Yeah.
Because he's sort of like a Nick Maxwell type.
Plays his role.
He does his role week in, week out, and he'd give absolutely everything for the jumper that he wears. So,
speaking of jumpers that he wears, now that he's retired, maybe we can get the names on the jumpers, because he was the only player whose name wouldn't fit on the jumpers.
I'm sure there are a couple of them.
He actually had LRT on the back.
Yeah, LRT, yeah.
Weekend.
I think Cole Jazz, he had his name as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
LRT was the only one.
LRT was the only abbreviated name in the entire competition.
Well, it's very nostalgic because when I was a kid, I saw his debut.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking he's got a very funny name. And, he was a scrawny kid. He was sort of crushing.
He's always been a bit of a...
Still is, yeah. But, it's a bit of a, kind of a nostalgic feeling to see him.
He's always been kind of this kind of goofy cult hero through this entire...
But he's been a good player for them, make no mistake about it.
Yeah.
One other one that we didn't mention last week, you and I, was Brent Maloney also announced his retirement.
Yeah.
He's played with 3 clubs at your boys.
Started at the Cats, went to Melbourne, went to Brisbane.
Finished to Brisbane.
Yeah, played most of his career at Melbourne, but a injury, I can't remember what the injury was.
I think it was foot. I think it might have been his foot or wrist or something.
Has called a time on his career, so...
It was actually interesting. I was discussing this during the week with fellow Cats supporters, and he was, I believe he was drafted the same year as the Kelly, Bartel, Ablett.
He was.
The big crop of the 2007 Premiership side.
Yeah.
And he was actually... It was a toss-up between him and James Kelly to be traded to Melbourne, so it's interesting the curve his career's taken.
Well, I honestly think that Brent Maloney was a very talented footballer.
Yeah.
Honestly, he was a gun player. I mean, people look at him going, he went between clubs and he ended up crashing and burning. No, I don't agree with that. He was, a star for Melbourne for a very, very...
Well, he made a huge
impact.
Correct, yeah.
He made a huge impact when he came to Brisbane. His first season there was absolutely terrific.
Oh, yeah, I mean... There was one stage where him and Jamar, I think, broke the record for most hit-out clearances in history. I remember. In one season, the Jamar to Maloney clearance happened more times than any other ruck midfielder combo ever. So there's that for you. But good mention there, Josh. Brett Maloney is a very good player.
And that brings us to the end of the round 22 edition of News and Views.
Absolutely. Cracking show again. Make sure you tune into Beyond the Boundary, which is...
Link to that at the end.
Link to the end of the end. But, plenty to get through. It's going to be a cracking round of footy. Finals coming. We're excited. Can't wait for the finals to come around. Hopefully, all our teams appear. All realistic. Well, yours is a certainty.
That would be ideal.
Yours is a certainty.
I know that, Josh.
Still...
Well, yours would probably be more or less.
We should.
It's actually the table's gone in order of certainty of side play today, so.
But thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week.